Okay, so you want to own a dairy farm. Buy the herd, build the parlor, ship the milk, watch the co-op checks roll in. That's the plan in your head. And unlike a lot of what we cover on this channel, it's a plan that actually works for some people. Here's the catch. A dairy farm is not a herd of cows with a barn attached. It is a twice-daily manufacturing operation selling into a price you don't set, with a biological production line that never takes a day off. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what it takes to make a dairy farm profitable, and whether you're the kind of owner who can pull it off. Let's start with what it actually costs to get in. The herd and the parlor are the two numbers that stop most people before they start. Productive dairy cow runs $1,800 to $2,800 depending on breed and milk production history. A modest starter herd of 60 cows is $108,000 to $168,000 before you've built anywhere to milk them. That's the number that ends most conversations at the herd alone. The parlor makes it worse. A functional milking parlor for 60 cows with basic automation runs $200,000 to $500,000, and that's before land. First, land. Dairy operations need cropland for feed as much as pasture for cows. Figure 2 to 3 acres per cow when you account for hay and silage production. 60 cows means 120 to 180 acres, running $1,500 to $6,000 an acre depending on region, $180,000 to $1,080,000 in land alone. Second, milking and cooling equipment. Beyond the parlor structure itself, the milking machinery, bulk milk tank, and cooling system run $80,000 to $200,000, and none of it is optional. Raw milk that isn't cooled within 2 hours of milking is unsellable by law in most jurisdictions. Third, feed storage and handling. Silos, feed mixers, and manure management infrastructure run $60,000 to $150,000, and manure management specifically is regulated, permitted, and inspected in most dairy states. And here's the first trap nobody budgets for: the milking schedule itself. Dairy cows are milked twice a day, every day, 365 days a year, with no exceptions for holidays, weather, or your own health. That's not a cost line. It's a structural constraint that determines whether you need paid labor from day one or whether you're personally chained to a twice-daily schedule indefinitely. Add it up, and a modest 60-cow starter dairy operation costs $568,000 to $2,098,000 to get running. And we haven't sold a single gallon yet. So what did you actually buy? Not a herd of cows in the way the postcard suggests. What you bought is closer to a perishable commodity manufacturing line running on a biological schedule you cannot pause, selling into a price set by a federal milk marketing order system that has never met you and never will. Think of it less like ranching and more like running a perishable goods factory that cannot shut down for a single day, cannot store its own product for more than 48 hours, and has no control over the price it receives when the truck arrives. That's not a lifestyle business. That's a manufacturing line with a 2-hour shelf life clock and someone else holding the price sheet. Now let's follow the money that moves every single day, because this is where the real business hides: feed. A lactating dairy cow eats 50 to 100 pounds of feed a day between hay, silage, and grain supplement. $2,000 to $3,500 per cow per year, the largest single cost category by a wide margin. Veterinary and herd health. Routine reproductive management and vaccinations run $150 to $300 per cow per year, but mastitis, an udder infection that's the single most common dairy cow health issue, can require treatment, milk withholding periods where that cow's milk can't be sold, and in repeat cases, early culling of an otherwise productive animal. Labor and equipment maintenance. Even a family operation needs reliable twice-daily milking labor 365 days a year, plus machinery upkeep on the parlor and cooling systems. $80,000 to $150,000 a year on a 60-cow operation once you account for the reality that farm families need vacation days too. And here's the mechanism inversion nobody expects: you are not the one setting your milk price. In the United States, the Federal Milk Marketing Order System sets a minimum blend price based on how milk is ultimately used: fluid milk, cheese, butter. And that price is negotiated far upstream of your farm, between processors and regulators, with individual farmers as price takers at the bottom. You bear all the production risk. The processor and the marketing order system set the number on the check. That's the part nobody budgets for. So the annual operating cost lands somewhere between $2,300 and $4,000 per cow for an operation where every single cow is either producing revenue or costing you money every day. There is no off-season to plan around. Run that forward on a 60-cow herd, and you're looking at $138,000 to $240,000 a year in operating costs, before a single price collapse. And fragility here is structural. The US milk price has swung by 30 to 40% within a single year multiple times this century, driven by national and global supply shifts you have zero visibility into and zero ability to hedge against as a small operator. Just when the math starts to feel survivable, a national milk price collapse turns a break-even operation into a cash flow crisis inside a single quarter, with cows that still need milking twice a day regardless of what the check is worth. In late 2014, a man named Daniel Kowalczyk, running a 200-cow dairy operation outside Eau Claire, Wisconsin, had done almost everything right. He'd expanded from his parents' 90-cow herd starting in 2011, financing new parlor equipment and additional land through an expansion loan while milk prices were near record highs. By 2014, agricultural lenders had held his operation up as a model of well-timed dairy expansion. The problem wasn't the cows. The problem was 2015. U.S. milk prices, which had peaked near $25 per hundredweight in late 2014, collapsed to under $16 per hundredweight by mid-2015. Driven by a global oversupply as Russia's import ban and slowing Chinese demand hit international dairy markets simultaneously. Kowalczyk's expansion debt had been underwritten, assuming prices closer to $20. His revenue fell by roughly a third in under a year, while his fixed costs, the new loan payments, the larger feed bill for the expanded herd, stayed exactly the same. He drew down savings, then a line of credit, hoping prices would recover within a season the way they historically had. They didn't recover meaningfully until 2017, 2 full years later. By then, Kowalczyk had accumulated over $340,000 in additional debt, just servicing the gap between his fixed costs and his collapsed revenue. He sold 80 head to reduce herd size and debt exposure in early 2017 and restructured his remaining operation at roughly half its pre-2015 scale. The answer is not personal incompetence. The answer is structural. But here's the part nobody tells you. Dairy farming does work. And there's a witness for that too. In 2012, a family named the Renaud family started a 40-cow dairy operation on inherited land outside Burlington, Vermont, with a herd size a fraction of Kowalczyk's and no plan to compete on commodity volume at all. The difference showed up almost immediately. Instead of shipping raw milk to a co-op for the federal blend price, the Renauds invested in a small on-farm creamery and began processing their own milk into artisan cheese and bottled milk, sold direct through farmers markets, a farm store, and regional grocery accounts. By 2016, 4 years in, they were capturing $4 to $8 per gallon equivalent through cheese and bottled milk sales, compared to the roughly $1.60 to $1.90 per gallon equivalent commodity blend price Kowalczyk had been exposed to during the collapse. Their revenue per cow ran 3 to 5 times the commodity equivalent. Their net income by 2018, on a herd 1/5 the size of Kowalczyk's pre-2015 operation, ran $75,000 to $95,000 a year. Genuine, sustainable profit built on value-added processing rather than raw commodity volume. They weren't immune to the same 2015 price collapse. But because only a fraction of their milk was ever sold at the raw commodity price, most went straight into their own cheese and bottling operation. The national price crash barely touched their revenue. Their customers were paying for cheese and bottled milk, not a hundredweight of raw commodity. So what's the single structural variable that separated Kowalczyk from the Renauds? It wasn't luck, and it wasn't work ethic. Both families worked their herds with real dedication. It was who owned the last transformation of the product. Kowalczyk sold raw milk into a system where the price was set entirely outside his farm, by federal marketing orders, by global supply shocks, by a Russian import ban he had never heard of until it cratered his income. When the price collapsed, his revenue collapsed with it, instantly and completely. The Renauds sold a finished product where they captured every dollar of value added between raw milk and the shelf. When the same price collapse hit the industry in 2015, it barely reached their farm because their customers were never buying at the commodity price in the first place. The answer is not personal incompetence. The answer is who captures the value between the cow and the customer. So what does profitability actually require? On the commodity path, the Kowalczyk path. A dairy operation typically needs 500 cows or more before scale efficiencies and volume contracts generate real per-cow margin at commodity blend prices. Below that scale, on raw milk sales alone, you are structurally exposed to every price swing with no efficiency cushion to absorb it. On the value-added path, the Renaud path. Profitability is achievable at 30 to 60 cows, but requires capital investment in processing infrastructure and a genuinely different skill set. Food production, branding, direct sales, and retail relationships that most raw milk dairy farmers have never had to build. Years to break, even 4 to 6 years on the value-added path given the creamery build-out, 5 to 8 years on the commodity path given the scale required. Typical net margin once established, 3 to 8% on the commodity path at scale, 20 to 35% on the value-added path at a fraction of the herd size. That's a bulk grain shipment versus an artisan bakery. Same raw ingredient, completely different economics once it leaves the farm. Let's simulate it. Same land, same starting herd, same owner. 2 different years. Good year. Feed runs $84,000. Vet and herd health, $9,000. Labor and equipment maintenance, $95,000. Milk price holds steady near the recent average. Total operating cost, roughly $188,000. On a 40-cow value-added operation processing most of its own milk into cheese and bottled sales, gross revenue runs $290,000 to $340,000. Net profit for the year, $102,000 to $152,000. A genuinely life-changing number for a family operation. Now, the bad year. Same fixed costs. Feed, vet care, labor. Climb to $205,000 as feed grain prices spike. A national milk price shock reduces the wholesale value of the surplus raw milk the farm still sells alongside its processed products, and a mastitis outbreak requires treating a third of the herd, temporarily pulling their milk from both the commodity and value-added streams. Total operating cost, $224,000. Because most of the farm's revenue still comes from processed cheese and bottled milk rather than raw commodity sales, gross revenue holds at $255,000 to $290,000, reduced but nowhere near collapsed. Net profit, $31,000 to $66,000. A hard year, a real pay cut, but still a profit, not the 2-year debt spiral Kowalczyk faced. That's the entire difference between the two witnesses in one chart. One man's bad year triggered 2 years of accumulating debt. The other family's bad year was still a real, if smaller, paycheck. So can you own a dairy farm? Yes, with real, specific conditions. If you're entering the commodity path, you need $1,500,000 or more in starting capital, a realistic path to 500-plus cows within several years, and the balance sheet to survive a multi-year price collapse without your lender calling the loan. This is a full-time, capital-intensive business that rewards scale, generational land ownership, and cheap access to capital more than it rewards a first-generation entrant with modest savings. If you're entering the value-added path, you need meaningfully less land and herd size. A 30 to 60 cow operation with $600,000 to $1 million in starting capital, including processing infrastructure, is realistic. But you need a genuinely different skill set: food production, branding, and direct customer relationships. This path is more accessible to a first-generation owner, and it's the path that actually produced a resilient, profitable outcome in the case study you just watched. If your plan is to buy a herd, ship raw milk to a co-op, and hope the federal blend price stays favorable with no plan for what happens when it doesn't, the math is not on your side. It was never on Daniel Kowalczyk's side either, and he did almost everything right. You didn't buy a dairy farm. You bought the right to sell a product that spoils in 2 hours, twice a day, forever. And the only owners who win are the ones who stop selling it raw.